Have you ever wondered what it takes to build a truly global team? With the rise of remote work and borderless talent, businesses have more access to top talent than ever before. But are they ready to compete in the global talent war? Well, hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Jess Get Hired podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Fiesta George. Today, we're going to dive into a topic that's become very crucial for businesses everywhere. It's how to win the war on global talent. And today, I'm really excited because I get to welcome in Jonathan Romley to the show. Jonathan is a global talent expert and the founder of Lundy, which is a company that helps businesses tap into the incredible pool of international talent. He has nearly 2 decades of experience in scaling companies across continents. He's a thought leader on how to attract, retain, and engage high-performing global teams. And he's also the author of a book called Winning the Global Talent War. He's going to share his insights on how to navigate the future of work. So Jonathan, welcome into the Just Get Hired podcast.
Thanks, Jessica. Let's have some fun.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited. The world of work is changing dramatically, and in recent years, especially when it comes to hiring talent across the borders, it's been a challenge for many companies. So from your perspective, why is building a global talent strategy no longer just a competitive advantage, but why is it a necessity for businesses today?
Well, it's no longer a competitive advantage because if you're not doing it, well, you are already behind. You are already a little bit behind. Of course, businesses of all shapes and sizes, big and small, are looking beyond, not just their local talent pool, not just statewide. Of course, the new local talent pool in the US is the US, right? So
Right.
we used to hire, in our city. Then we said, okay, maybe we'll hire in our state. And then we started moving some jobs from California to places like Texas, where cost of talent was a little bit lower. And, then we went remote and started just hiring people all over the US. But if you can hire somebody anywhere in the US, well, you can hire somebody just about anywhere to do the same job. If
Right.
They're willing to work the hours, match up with the time zone, if that's what you need. So it opens up, well, a world of opportunities for every business, every entrepreneur, every company. I'd say almost every company, unless of course, 100% of your business is physical. Well, then you're going to be in trouble. I mean, you still can do your back office, administrative, accounting, things like this. You can still do that internationally, but of course your service delivery, if it's a physical service, you're going to be not able to take advantage in the same way that other companies may be able to. But this is something that I truly believe will help not only today's most promising companies to become the global powerhouses that they can be, but also to help small businesses that are facing the challenge of ever scaling not only labor costs, but just the cost of doing business, right? It's inflation. Every day it's a little bit more expensive to do everything. So we've got to find a way to balance that out as leaders, whether we're, a people leader or a leader of the business in general. We're kind of tasked with this mission. And well, I believe that global talent is one way to attack that problem.
Okay, so if we're talking about businesses who are trying to build their brand and expand their team from scratch, what's the first step then to creating a solid global recruitment strategy, in your opinion?
Well, the hardest part about globalization, about doing anything internationally, is actually knowing where to start. And what we recommend at my company, Lundy, and what I would recommend just based on my experience, that first we take a deep breath and we zoom out and we think about what is the business objective? What are we trying to accomplish with this? Because there are 3 common reasons that companies think about hiring abroad. The first one is cost efficiency. So it's, supporting business growth through cost efficiency, through probably reducing costs or having the same cost, but more people. The second one is because you're growing the business, you're expanding into a new market. Like we're going to start selling our products in Asia,
Mm-hmm.
or we're going to build a factory in Europe, whatever. The third one is because the talent that we need in order to grow our business, to sustain our business, might not be available, or we might not be the plus employer in that space. We might have a lot of competition, and our company might be great, and we might even have the budget, but we really may face a lot of competition, and it might be very difficult to hire the kind of roles that we're looking for, right? I had a research lab that I set up in Ukraine, and I was taking PhD professors, a master's thesis, students out of the top technical university in Ukraine to do, whatever I had an idea to do that week together with the person that was leading the research lab to achieve that same result in the US, in California, where I'm from. Nothing is impossible, but it would have been very difficult, much more difficult than it was when I've done that in Ukraine, for example, right? So what is it that we're trying to accomplish? What is the business objective? That's where you really have to start. And I think once you've established why you want to do it, well, then you can start to think about where you want to do it. And I mean, where you want to do it has, a few different factors, right? Like, where is the team that currently does this? And are we adding people to that team, or are we replacing that team? Could be a provocative topic, but like, what are we actually doing here? And do the people we're going to hire, do they need to like work on the same business hours? What is the style of collaboration in that team as it exists today? Do they know what the word asynchronous means as it relates to collaborating with team members? Or are they a very face-to-face, a very touchy-feely, let's sit all day long in Zoom meetings, I'm not judging, kind of team structure? All of these things must be considered before you do any recruitment, right? Absolutely. And then, of course, very important one, once you start honing in based on time zones or maybe some legal requirements in your business, whatever they are, once you start honing in on those countries, be sure that the talent that you're looking for exists in that country. Now, it's pretty easy to hire one person anywhere. Like, we'll tell people this all the time. Like, you can find one person anywhere, but do you need one? Do you need 100? Or do you need 1,000? And on what timeline? Because what we also see is that companies make the mistake that you start in a market and you go to that market and you put some roots down and you maybe form an entity, or, you open an office, or you say, okay, this is where we are. We're doing our international team in Poland, right? Where I'm today talking to you. And you might find that was okay for the first 100 hires. But when you get into year 2 or 3, and you continue to try to push and cover for headcount turnover, that you may find that thing that seemed like a really good idea at the time, that the labor market is evolving. And you kind of have to try to close your eyes and see the future. How difficult not only is this today with what our needs are in the business today, but how scalable is our choice of market as a solution in the long term for this initiative? So you need to do all these things before you start thinking about job descriptions, countries, recruiters, just before you do any of that. First, we need to decide, where are we going? Why? Is there a business case?
Well, now you talked about, managing through different time zones, different cultures. Most of the people who listen to the show are going to be in the United States. Obviously, you want to pick a country where English is spoken, pretty well and fluently, to where you can understand both, U.S. Language and like some of our, different things that we like to talk about, and be relatable to that. But are there any key lessons from your own experience where you have found that managing a team across different time zones and with different cultures, there's challenges, I'm sure, but What are some of your experiences in managing through that, and how can companies overcome those cultural challenges?
If you're a business in Florida and you hire somebody in Argentina
Hmm.
and you hire them as a full-time employee and you send them your Florida employee handbook, they might be a little confused.
Exactly. Yeah.
It might not apply to them. And so something that's important, I mean, if you're a company that doesn't have an employee handbook, that's a different problem, but it's actually
Right.
probably better in that case. Better send nothing than that thing which is totally irrelevant. But
Hmm.
that we need to look at, not just the talent acquisition, not just the TA process, not just the recruitment process, but also with the people process, the human resources aspect of this.
Hmm.
By the way, HR and recruitment kind of not exactly the same thing. So when we think about what onboarding looks like, what candidate experience looks like for those people that are coming in, because of course the most important thing here is if we go through all of these charades of like where and how and what, and then we do it and we execute and we recruit and we send out job offers and people come on board, and we don't want them to drop in the first 3 months at work
Hmm.
because they feel like company doesn't understand me, manager doesn't understand me, having difficulty with, I don't know, some cultural nuance. I think communication would be solved in the recruitment process, but we want to make sure that we are treating our FTEs, our full-time employees in other countries, the same way. I mean, within the legal scope of requirements,
Right.
right?
Of
Because
course.
like laws are different everywhere, but that
Exactly.
we are providing the same structure and experience as we do for an employee in the United States. And there are a
Hmm.
lot of ways to do that. You might work with a partner, or if you're hiring a lot of people, you might hire somebody to take care of that locally as part of your strategy. But
Hmm.
it's pretty important because, if you go through all that and then your employees just start dropping out because you thought about only how do I get you, not how do I keep you, well, then you're going to be in trouble.
Very true. Well, some of the resistance, I think, for hiring internationally is, we have a lot of people here in the United States who are currently unemployed, who hopefully have the same types of skill sets. Why would we want to farm out some of our jobs overseas?
It's difficult to make that argument to someone who's unemployed. Like, I'm sure that you're very good at your job, but you're just a lot more expensive. And I think that
Okay.
this is a business argument, and
Hmm.
a business as an entity has responsibility to shareholders to deliver value if it's a public company, or if it's not, to the owners in any case. And of course, it's really important to think about the people, the human aspect of this, not
Hmm.
just numbers and data. But I think that as a candidate, well, it really is true that what can be done remotely in Boston can be done remotely in Buenos Aires. It's just a fact.
Hmm.
And as a candidate on the American job market today, that's something you have to think about, right? Like, what value do you bring to a company other than your physical presence? Like, other than I can be in the office in 45 minutes if I have to be. That's what I'm doing. That's how I can add value to the company. So, this presents the business case for upskilling and for putting yourself in a position as an employee that you're able to do something. By the way, physical presence is relevant, right?
That's
Uh,
true.
that is unique. Everybody's a snowflake and a butterfly, right? We're all unique, but that is going to help you to preserve your profession. I mean, bad news, your profession might not be preservable. And this is tough. I know. I mean, I even see in my business, right? There's plenty of recruitment automation tools out there every day. Somebody's trying to sell us a tool that should do the work of, our local recruiters in 70 countries. I'm not sure if I believe it, but hey,
Hmm.
it exists. We're either competing against an international workforce or or an AI workforce. At some point, as humanity takes its last breath here,
Hmm.
we have to think about what makes us unique, and in the same way that an employer thinks about, what is our employer value proposition. So we need to think
Hmm.
about what is my employee value proposition. What am I going to bring to a business that can't easily be done, well, somewhere else. And, part of that might be cultural understanding, regional understanding, very, very detailed knowledge about, your industry, any laws or regulations that might be relevant. I mean, it really depends what your job is, right?
Right. Okay. Well, I want to talk about your book, Winning the Global Talent War. What inspired you to write it? And why do you feel now is the right time to have that type of conversation?
So I was inspired to write this book through my own experiences. Before I started Lundy, the business that helps companies to scale their global talent acquisition and think through some of these problems that we've mentioned earlier around, where and how. I still ran a business, but I ran businesses that were not in human resources, I've run these businesses in the United States, in Ukraine, in Poland. I've had a business in China, and today in Lundy we're in 70 countries. But leading up into this founding of Lundy and eventually writing the book, have been my experiences in building businesses in very unique environments, in places where you would think it's difficult to start a business if you don't speak the language, never been to the country before. I don't know. And certainly I was in that position at some point, right? Like I, started a business in a country where I didn't speak the language. My Mandarin is still very bad, very bad. And having to go through these experiences of being physically in those markets, right? Because before the pandemic, that's what you did. Like, I'm going to go do this in another country. You hopped on an airplane and you went and did it. I think we're doing that again now, but there was a time when we weren't, and just go and figure it out. So I've been through every mistake that one can make, maybe even more than once, in a lot of places. And those experiences led me to start Lundy as a company. And since we started the company, we worked with hundreds of companies that are experiencing the same problems that I did, and that I couldn't find a truly global solution for, just solutions in a lot of different places. Well, and rolling in those experiences and being able to share them and actually give the blueprint of how we do what we do. So, if you read the book, you can copy paste what we do really in your own business. Of course, if you need help with it, well, yeah, that's what we do, but you really can do it yourself. And that is why I wrote the book, to show that, this is something that every business can take advantage of, and that it's not just about hiring freelancers, right? Because this is a lot what we think about in the States when we're thinking about hiring somebody somewhere else. We think about a freelancer, but freelancers are like less than 1% of the total addressable talent market globally. Right. So if you only look for freelancers, you're really limiting your opportunities. And I think that's the message that this book carries. It's a really important one, right? If you're just looking for freelancing type websites, I know it's more convenient. You don't have to buy somebody a laptop, but they're probably asking you for 3 or 4 times what somebody gets paid in their country to do that job. Not always, but quite often. And you're kind of fishing in a pond when you could be swimming in the ocean.
Since building Lundy, what are your biggest lessons that you've learned from building and scaling your business, and how you are approaching the different companies that are on your client list and how they're also approaching hiring globally?
So what I can share about the experience of scaling so rapidly is that we have very few physical offices. We have physical offices, but very few, very low footprint business in terms of launching operations in new countries. So we are almost 100% remote, except for those people working in an office. I work in an office, but that's my choice. It's not a requirement, but I guess anything could be my choice because, I wear the boss pants. So I guess I can do what I want. Yeah. So I guess I can do what I want, but my choice is to work in an office. Nevertheless, we were able to accomplish this so quickly because we didn't see borders as barriers to our growth. So we looked where the demand was. We got a good sense of where talent was moving, And when we started the Lundy business, actually, we were focused on labor mobility, on people moving from one country to another for work. And well, we had to change that pretty quickly because we started in 2019 and the world changed a little bit in 2020. So we flipped that into moving work to people. And I think that, the lesson there was to be nimble, right? But even so recovered, we made a very active decision to totally get out of that business at the end of 2021.
Okay.
But, for the first couple of years in the business, we were first doing only people to work, and then we were doing work to people and people to work. And we understood that one had just much bigger opportunity that, look, the idea that someone on the other side of the world who is qualified, has the experience, and is able to perform a job should have to uproot their life and move for economic opportunity is so 1898, right?
Right.
Or 1998 in this case. But it's such a crazy idea that we're such an interconnected world globally that that we're still saying, hey, you get up and move to another country, and there's so much politics around that.
Right.
When actually, if you think about it, someone who goes to work abroad, somebody that immigrates for economic opportunity, has a greater economic impact, at least I would argue, but also from data perspective, has a greater economic impact on the country that they migrate to than the country that they migrated from, right? Because talent going out of the country, sending money back, sure, yes. And if we look at overseas foreign workers out of the Philippines, there's a double-digit contribution to GDP, double-digit percentage contribution to the GDP of the Philippines. Remittances means, people sending money home when they're working abroad for work. But, what do you send home? 10%, right? I mean, because you've got your rent and your expenses and your life and your family maybe in the country where you've moved to. So what do you send back to your parents, uncles, cousins, brothers, wife, kids, whatever? It's not so much. So your economic impact on the country that you're from is maybe 10% of your earnings. If you stay where you are, provided that it's safe, that there's not a war, and that you're not fleeing something,
Right.
you're just migrating for economic opportunity, but you're otherwise in an okay place where it's safe to stay. Well, if you stay, 100% of your income is now available to the market where you live. We're much better off to let people stay where they are, work for any country that's willing, or any company that's willing to hire them. It's good for everybody, in fact, if you can make it work.
True. Now, you talked about something earlier about technology, and technology is changing everything that we do these days, including how we find and manage talent. What role do you think tech will play in the future when it comes to hiring globally?
Tech is an enabler, not a replacement. I think that we see a lot of new products and services coming onto the market in the last 12 to 18 months that are offering to do all kinds of magic, whether that's shortlisting candidates, whether that's, giving you a way to search into your company's database of candidates, into your applicant tracking system, your ATS, in ways that you haven't searched and discovered before, in the identification of talent that may have an opportunity for internal mobility that's moving people around within your organization, or upskilling, reskilling. These are all great ways that technology can be used. There are other ways that are less great that we've seen that help candidates to, apply to 700 jobs a day or something like that. And these things, they're just making a mess for talent teams. that, everybody now looks like the perfect candidate. So if everybody looks like the perfect candidate and, everything hits the erogenous zone of your candidate screening filter criteria, then you're like, you get a problem. You get a problem because you've just got a virtual pile of resumes on your desk and it's just like stacking up. And there's kind of a battle of the bots going on between
Absolutely.
the systems that are designed for screening and shortlisting applicants and the tools that applicants are using to try to get past those systems to talk to a human. And this is coming back to why, humans, we're still important. We still play a role. We are not yet forgotten. And I think this is such a time to consider how you balance this strategy.
Mhm.
There's a report published by Capterra a couple of weeks ago.
Mhm.
The statistic was something like 38% of candidates said that they would decline a job offer from a company that like obviously used AI in
Huh.
the recruitment process. Like if they understood at some point that there was like that they were talking to a bot,
Right.
and not when they were aware that they were talking to a bot, when there was like a deceptive use of AI, like, hey, I'm Sophie, the recruiter, and can you ask a couple of screening questions for me? This pretend kind of
Right.
agent, this agentic AI that is great, but we're in the people business after all, which means we have to think about the decisions that we make in that in that recruitment process and what it
Mhm.
looks like in terms of candidate experience. Because again, at the end of the day, the goal is to bring people into the organization so that we can grow the organization. We can be a bigger company, hire more people, grow. And
Right.
if we create an experience that's negative for candidates, whatever optimization win that we achieved is lost. If we don't, in the end result, end up with people hired into the organization who stay in the organization and are
Mhm.
happy in the organization. We have to keep our NPS score up on talent.
Right. Well, I feel AI is seeping in slowly, but companies are still far from learning how to really incorporate it. But you're right, it's not going to replace people because we need people to understand what needs to go into the AI and how to extract the things that come out of AI. So I think this is a topic that we'll probably be talking about for years to come. And I don't quite think any company globally has really learned how to navigate through the AI water, so to speak, and incorporate that into how they help their talent pool. But before we sign off, are there specific regions or markets that you see that are up and coming when it comes to high quality, untapped talent? You mentioned like the Philippines, you're in Poland right now. You did a lot of work in Ukraine. Are there other specific markets that companies should maybe start thinking about when they are considering adding international talent to their playbook?
So if you're just getting started, Philippines, Poland, and Ukraine are not for the faint of heart. These are well-developed markets where, if I look out the window here, I can see like the Citibank logo and I can see, all of these shared service centers and global business process outsourcing kind of things that are all around here. So it's not here. These are great places if you're going to scale, but they're tough labor markets. I've been in this market in staffing and recruitment in Poland for the better part of 10 years. So my experience in Poland predates Lundy by half a decade. And of course, we still have clients here and business here. And actually, the funny thing, I'm in Poland talking to companies in Poland about hiring internationally, not hiring in Poland. So, there's a talent gap everywhere. It's different everywhere. That's for sure. So keep in mind, right? Once the market that you're thinking about going to, if you hear that they're looking into other markets to hire talent, we took to lots of Polish IT companies or companies that are on the market in Central Europe and have big operations in Poland that are looking to regions like Egypt. Like every company that's in some kind of outsourcing that is selling services to other companies, not shared service centers, which tend to be internal kind of insourcing operations, right? Centralized, someplace, back office, whatever. But outsourcing companies, those that sell some services to your business that might not have the same restrictions on where they might open operations, are opening in Egypt. So unfortunately for some companies, Egypt, for whatever reason, may not be an option from a compliance perspective or a time zone kind of thing, whatever. But I mean, look, in general, the answer is Africa, the continent. Of course, just like Europe is not a country, Africa is not a country, but the answer lies on the African continent.
Okay.
For most companies. One challenge that you experience if you're not working asynchronously and you're on the West Coast in the US, you're not on the East Coast, and you want more time overlap. Latin America, again, LATAM is not a country, and it's even comprising of two continents in a way. So if we think about countries in Latin America, it depends on what you're hiring for.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the challenges there is that many American companies have been hiring a lot because the time zone is quite similar, right? So, it's the same. So the cost is going to be less than the US for companies in the US. But like if I talk to a company in Spain and a company in Spain says, hey, let's go to Latin America because, they speak Spanish, we speak Spanish, everything's going to be great. They're surprised to learn in many countries that the price of the talent is like the same, or so the difference is so marginal that when you factor in the cost of opening entities or using an employer of record or whatever, like you don't save any money. And that might be okay if your mission is find talent, but very often the Spanish mission that we encounter is like, we want to save money. So, these are challenges that you can run into depending on where you are in the world. I mean, hey, if you're not trying to save too much money and you're hiring, as an American company, you can do it in Canada. It's going to be like 20%. Oh, yeah. Salaries are the same, except they're in Canadian dollars. So it's like 20% less. And it's enough. They speak English there. It's not really complicated to open a company. Like we have a company in Canada. You can do it too. And I think that these are places, it just depends. Philippines, again, there's a massive outsourcing industry there. And if you're just trying to hire, one or two people, it's going to be tough in terms of what their expectations may be. Maybe freelancers, but many of these countries, you'll be surprised, people want to be employed as full-time employees. That it's not usual. And you want to be able to compete as an employer with the local market to access the entire labor market, not just a couple of people who are hanging out on a internet marketplace somewhere.
Right.
So I think that there are some other locations in Europe that are interesting. Albania, Georgia are places also to look at, depending on what your needs are. Colombia, Argentina. But if you have difficulty employing people as contractors, I wouldn't look at Argentina. The answer is it depends, but these are some places. You can also jump to globaltalentwar.com and subscribe to my newsletter where, every week we share some insights around global talent acquisition and, kind of that journey of hiring around.
Okay. Well, I'm going to make sure we put that in the show notes. I'd never thought about Egypt. A lot of the companies that I actually help support, we have talent in Bogota, in Colombia, because the headquarters is in Miami. Huge Spanish speaking population there. And there's a lot of talent. There's a lot of talent in Bogota that can do a lot of the things that we're asking them to do, but for the fraction of the cost. So it makes sense for that business, but we need to look at some of the other countries that you mentioned. But I appreciate you. This is a great conversation. I think companies everywhere are going to get so much value from your insights. And before we wrap up, where else can we find your book? And if we want to do work with Lundy, here's your time to do your shameless plug.
Sure. Well, the book is pretty much anywhere books are sold, and you can get the book. Also, globaltalentwar.com, sign up for the newsletter. And my company, Lundy, we're on the web at Hello Lundy. That's Lundi, like Monday in French, hellolundy.com. And we are here to support you with your global talent strategy and global talent recruitment needs, staffing in 70 countries around the world. So, hey, if that's the challenge that you have, we'd love to start a conversation.
Awesome. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much. And I appreciate everyone for listening. Make sure you go check out Jonathan's book, Winning the Global Talent War. Follow his work if you're looking to expand your talent pool beyond borders. If you like content like this, don't forget to share this episode with someone that you know. Click that subscribe button, add Jess Get Hired to your playlist, and follow me on all of your different social media channels. Until next time, thank you guys for tuning in to the Jess Get Hired podcast, and I'll catch you on my next episode.